We're speaking with Tess Walch from Market Check. Thanks for joining us again, Tess.
My pleasure.
Look, it's been a pleasure to watch what's happening on the grains front for our listeners in Victoria, South Australia and New South Wales. But South Australia looks like prices are particularly good for our grain growers at the moment.
Yeah, so obviously global markets have been quite volatile over the last few weeks given the conflict in the Black Sea. And we are seeing that translate into our prices locally. Not as much as the futures markets have been rallying, but still significant moves locally. And as you say, in South Australia particularly, most of harvest SA market spent trading higher than eastern markets. And we've seen that carry forward through this situation too. So barley has been a huge star over the last week. Yesterday you could sell over $3.90 Port Adelaide, which is incredible price for barley. Wheat for old crop, that APW market, Port Adelaide, sort of around the low 420s. It's come off about $20 over the last 3 days though. We have seen some weakening in the offshore markets that are translating through, but all in all, some very healthy pricing around.
Yeah, we'd spoken about how I'm calling it, maybe wrongly, a Goldilocks scenario in South Australia where we didn't have too much but didn't have too little with what we produced, whereas in the East Coast they had so much they're having trouble moving it. Is that fair to say what's a contributor to the SA premium?
Yeah, and it's also a port capacity thing as well. So in the eastern states, things are at max capacity in terms of their ability to move grain through the supply chain. Here in South Australia, as you say, the production was still good, but not the record levels that we've been seeing in New South Wales, and also with the addition of some extra port capacity over the last couple of years by way of Lucky Bay on Eyre Peninsula. That has really helped things as well. So basically, as the market's rallied, we've got more capacity to get that grain to market, which makes it a more desirable location to buy, which helps the price hold up.
Yeah, you mentioned the futures market earlier. I think we were looking at how some markets may be looking globally at Australia as a source if the Black Sea remains congested or out of action. Run us through the scenarios from the bullish to the bearish about where we might see prices go.
Yeah, so some bullish scenarios from now. Obviously, this conflict, it's about timing. So the longer the conflict goes on, the more volatile things are going to be in longer term. And it's down to things like, are Ukrainian farmers going to be able to tend crops in the spring and harvest them in July, along with the ability to get that grain into the export markets. And the Northern Hemisphere spring period is also a potentially bullish scenario for world grain pricing. So if there's, we're already historically tight, and then you take out some of the exportable surplus from Ukraine and Russia, and if we have a tough spring somewhere in the Northern Hemisphere, then it's just going to compound these issues and either have a double header issue or roll from one issue to another. So given what Putin decides to do and what the weather decides to do, we could have quite a bullish set of scenarios to follow. And in terms of the bearish, the most obvious one is if there's a ceasefire. So if the conflict is over, in inverted commas, sooner rather than later, then we are likely going to see a reasonably aggressive fall in the markets, particularly in those futures markets. And over the last 3 days, we have seen weakness in those markets. Just looking at some of the numbers, the March 21 Chicago contract, the nearby, that's fallen 179 Aussie dollars in the last 3 days, with things settling down. The one that we're probably more interested in at the moment is the December 21 contract in the Chicago futures market, which relates more to our new crop pricing, and that's only fallen $38, but it's just less volatile in that back end.
Yep, a horrific scenario for people in Ukraine and Eastern Europe, but it's still got some upside for farmers here locally, and hopefully the conflict does end soon, but then maybe other factors like the weather, you say, might turn in Aussie farmers' favour.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, Tess, thanks for joining us. Good comprehensive wrap there on the grains front. Much appreciated, and have yourself a good weekend.
Thank you, you too.